Okay, y'all, I am so excited. We have a really cool guest today. So, welcome to the show, Sarah Walton.
Hi, Adrien. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here
Oh,
today.
we are super excited. Before we jump in and like pick your brain apart, I would love for you to share your story of you.
Like, why do I do this thing I do? So, I really appreciate you asking that. And I mean, the crux of it is, I was raised really, really poor. Um, and there was a moment in my life, as I think, especially as a woman, right? I was only 16 and we were so incredibly poor. When I say we were poor, I want to let you know, we had like a half a loaf of bread and a jar of honey, the end, right? And this was bread my mom had made from scratch. And at this specific time in my life, I had just tried out for the high school dance team. This is all I wanted to do since I was 5. I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I worked my rear end off. I mean, not really, it's still there, but I worked
Yeah.
hard and I made the team and I was so excited. And then we got that letter that talks about how much the costumes are going to cost and the jacket and the shoes. And I don't know, Adrian, have you ever had one of those like out of body experiences where you like watch yourself have an experience? That was kind of what that was like. I felt the floor, like my stomach just dropped right through the floor. And I felt like this is it. My whole, like at 16, right? But my
Yeah.
life's dream is over. Like there's nothing I can do. So what I did is I went to the mall because it was the 80s, because I'm 300 years old. And I got a job at one of those little cart kiosk things selling stuff that nobody needed, but it was the 80s. So it was cool. And I got my first paycheck. I was so excited. And it was enough for the deposit. So I was very proud of myself. And at the time, I had a single mom, right, with my younger half brother, who was, gosh, she must have been like 6 at that time. And I didn't have my own bank account. So we went to the grocery store to like cash the check, right? I'm so excited. So we walk in and my mom said, hey, Sarah, do we have enough money to get some strawberries there on sale? Now, I know if you're a therapist, your brain just exploded, but that's another story for another time. I thought, okay, that's how much the strawberries are. This is how much is for my costume. Yes, we can do both. So I went to the service center to get my check cash. She went to go get the strawberries. So I walk around with the cash in hand. I'm so excited. I'm looking for my mom at the express checkout with my little brother. She's not there. So I go down the aisles and I see her in line with my younger brother with a cart full of groceries. Mm-hmm. And I know this is a cart full of groceries that she can't pay for. And I'm standing there. I'm only 16, right? But I am standing there and I'm thinking, I can pay for these groceries or I can pay for the costume I've wanted forever, but I can't do both. I can take care of my family and their needs or my dreams, but I can't do both. And that decision at age 16 carried me through most of my life. This took place in Salt Lake City. I moved to New York City, to the place that's the toughest to make it, right? After I graduated from UCLA, I work my way up, all the way up the ranks, And I have this huge, beautiful glass office. I have this amazing team and I am dying inside, right? I mean, I am miserable dying inside. And there was a moment when I was sitting in that glass office, listening to the seconds of my life tick away. And I thought, I decided a long time ago I couldn't take care of myself and my family. And I just chose to take care of my family and not take care of me. And that was the day I quit. That was the day I decided every single woman I know, every single human being I know who's got an expertise that they want to share, that they love, that makes them happy, they should know how to do that. So no woman was ever in the position I was in that day or the position my mother was in that day. My mom's an extraordinary artist. Like, that she couldn't make a living doing that just blows my mind, right? But nobody taught her how. Nobody taught her about money. Nobody taught her about sales. And so that's really what drives me to this day, is making sure we know how to get money in our hands in a way that has integrity, that is loving and kind and takes care of other people. And I think, Adrien, it's one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you today, is I can't think of a group of people that the world needs more right now. I just cannot, in every sense of the word. We eat like crap. We sleep like crap. We treat our bodies like crap. We're not taking care of our mental health. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have got to get all of the wellness practitioners out in the world as fast as we possibly can. And that's going to take teaching you guys marketing and sales to make sure all the people who are dying to find you can find you.
Oh,
Literally. Yeah.
totally. Wow. Well, I'm just so excited to learn that more about you. And hopefully you got to dance at some point. As a former dancer, I'm like, oh, hopefully you got to dance someday. And especially living in New York.
Well, story does have a good ending. I will say more power to women that ended up buying the groceries that day.
Mm.
And a woman in our community heard what had happened and she paid for my costumes.
Oh,
I
I
know.
love that.
Amazing. I know.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I think it's also like, thank you so much for sharing that very personal and like
Yes.
profound story. And because dietitians, we are 98% female based, that is like resonates so true that we will always choose to take care of our family or our loved ones before our career. And so I've even noticed it when we start to take care of patients, like, oh, it's okay. You don't have to like pay fully today. And then their credit card stops working or all of those things. So how do we start to wrap our brain around that balance of not feeling selfish or not feeling that, that ickiness with money?
Yeah, the salesiness of it all.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I have kind of a different approach to that. So hang on to your hats and glasses. But I have the strangest theory about money, but I do stick by it. And I don't know, are you familiar with Marianne Williamson or like The Secret or any of those?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. I never know. Some people are like, who, what, huh? And other people are like, oh my God, yes. Right. So when I moved to New York and I was working on my career, I got to work a lot with Marianne Williamson. Now, I've never read The Course in Miracles. I can't even pretend like I did. I could never say that. But what I did understand in listening to all of her recordings and working with her in the studio and watching her create her talks was this idea that there's only love and fear, right? And that all of our emotions stem from those two basic, right? And that the idea is that love's job is to bring up fear so that it can get healed. Right? Like that's sort of its job. And one day I was getting prepared to speak about money and I heard this, like, you guys are going to think I'm all crazy. They're going to be like, what? I swear, I don't know if you ever had this moment. Some people call them shower moments, or you have this moment where you have like this thought. And it was that money is like love. And I was like, no, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not saying that. Like, I don't want to be the lady who says that everywhere. Right. I'm the lady now who says that everywhere. But it was like, I don't want to say that out loud. But it really does have that love type like energy, right? And that bringing money into your life will bring up all the fears you haven't healed yet. Do the people in my life really love me? Am I smart enough to handle this? Am I good enough at what I do to be worthy of this? Am I pretty enough to have this much money? Which is crazy, but people say that to me all the time. Will my spouse leave me if I have a lot of money? Will I leave my spouse if I have a lot of money? Like these fears people have come up. And my theory is it's one of the reasons people who win the lottery or there's this huge influx of that energy into their lives, they'll get rid of it as fast as they can because there's so much they need to heal in order to be able to hold it. They'd rather get rid of it. That's just my theory. I'm not saying I'm right, but in watching it, it's kind of bearing out. And I've seen it in clients too, where I'm like, what the heck are you so afraid of?
Yeah.
And one of the more basic fears I hear is that rich people are jerks or they're the rich kid at school used to be a jerk to me or bully me or whatever. I don't want to be like that. And so they would rather be in debt and not have their clients pay and just do their stuff for free than be like that jerk. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're keeping money out of your life because of that. And there's like this moment where they go, not anymore, right? Like, it's like, oh, that's bananas, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the first shift we have to get is that we might have stuff we need to look at ourselves. It's not always about like, oh yeah, don't pay today or what, like, what is that? What's going on for us that we would like belittle our work like that?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Right? But the other thing, you know what you're saying to your client is, yeah, I don't believe in you to be able to pay for this.
Which is awful. Awful.
Right.
Wow. So how do we fix this? Like, I'm just like, I know everybody that's listening is taking notes. Okay. Like, yes, that's me. That's definitely me. So now what?
Okay. Well, just so you know, I call that co-signing on scarcity. That's like, yeah, I'm
Mm.
not worth it and you can't create it. Like that's, you're signing that document. You're like, yep, I don't believe in you to make money and I don't believe in my services enough to charge you. So
Mm.
keep that in mind because sometimes that alone will fix it itself. Where
Mm.
you go, that's gross. And I'm not doing that to people
Yeah.
anymore. So sometimes it literally is like that fast. But for other people, I think what you want to do is really look at, because sometimes you need your logical brain to take over, really look at the cost of not working with you.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can really help where it's like, look, you have to pay my bill because if you don't, you're going to end up paying XYZ doctor bill or XYZ prescription, or you're going to not lose the weight and you're going to throw away all the clothes you've bought or whatever, you know how that goes
Yeah.
in cycles. And I've had that conversation with some of my clients are stylists and some of my clients are nutritionists. And I'm like, can we talk about the amount of money people are throwing away by not working with you?
Yeah.
Like that's a real thing. So sometimes that can be really helpful where you go, wait a minute, that's a steal. And if you don't recognize that, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what this is going to end up saving you. And it's crazy for you not to pay this now. And you don't say that out loud, but you have that attitude kind of, right? You're like, yeah, you're crazy. No, you don't say that out loud. But if you can in your own mind, when the moment comes like, oh my gosh, I can't pay you. First of all, I'll tell you how to not get in that position. But if that happens, it's really interesting that you didn't bring the money.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not think you're worth it?
Wow.
And they'll go, oh, I got it. I'll bring it. Like all of a sudden they can find it. And you guys, when you get scared about that, or you get nervous about your pricing or what somebody says, think of it like this. If like their water heater went out today, they'd find the money to get it fixed tomorrow. Right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because they can and they will and they do. And
Mm-hmm.
listen, that's appropriate. That is an appropriate priority. Hot water, good. Right. Like this is a great priority. So, but we can get that. And so we have to understand as the service providers, as the people who have this opportunity to change people's lives and make their lives so much better, is it's our responsibility to communicate that priority and that priority is just as high as a water heater. Because if you don't have health, good luck.
So I think I hear a lot of like, yeah, buts like, well, like, I don't want to sound salesy. If I like tell them I'm better than a water heater, like oh my gosh, like, do they really have the funds? Like, oh, so I hear a lot of the yeah, buts coming up for all the listeners. So how do we get past that?
Okay. So that was a lot of yeah, buts. So a couple things. When you respect what you do, I'm going to say this right. Just stick with me for a sec. When you respect what you do, others will too. So that means you have payment policies that are clearly listed. I'm just going to say that straight out. And that is not being salesy. That is as kind as like sending on an invitation to somebody what the attire is and when they should show up and what the menu is going to be. Like you're just helping them figure out how to navigate. Okay. And then the other thing I think we can all be better at is respecting other people's processes. So when you give your price, assuming you're not a big jerk, and I would assume if you're part of Adrien's audience, you're not a big jerk, right? So if you're not a big jerk, your price is probably incredibly fair. And I would urge most of you to try to increase it by 30% and wrap your head around that. Okay. But look at that. Here's the reason why. When you respect that and you get that, what you need to allow is the other person the moment they need to figure out how important it is to them. And you got to respect that. And so sometimes if you're on a discovery call or you're on a sales call and it goes quiet, don't say anything. It's okay. They're going, shoot, this is really important to me. Okay, I'm not going to eat out for the next, okay, hold on. And they're literally doing that. Don't interrupt that and honor that. And give them the space and time to figure that out. And I think sometimes the biggest mistake we make in sales is we make it about us. It's not about us. It's about an opportunity to change someone else's life. And we interrupt that and mess that up by putting our own ego in and being worried about what they're going to think about us.
Oh, so true.
I hate to say this. We don't matter in the sales process. Like we don't. And the way that you're not salesy is you get the freak out of the way. Like do the work to communicate what you do. Do the work to talk about the transformations you cause and then shut up. Yes. I know. Isn't that like crazy for everybody to say, but just
Yep. Your ego is not your amigo. And so
Mm.
if you could just like take yourself out, because I think dietitians are really good about that in our sessions when we're working on whatever might be going on with a patient, but pre-session and like trying to get somebody in the door, we're trying to show off and like, oh, and this and this and this and this. And it's just let them ask the questions, let them do the driving.
Oh my gosh, you just made me relax so much. Yes. It really is. It's like, what do you need? What would your life be like if? Is that interesting to you?
Yeah.
Would that be worth it for you? And you know what? That's their call to make.
I mean,
they might be fine with cold water. Like that's their call to make. You know what I'm saying? We don't get to make that call. Yeah. And I really think that's a piece of sales that gets like overlooked.
So, okay, we have somebody that's made it through. They're rocking and rolling. They don't want cold water. They're wanting to kind of hang out with us and start that process. How do we start to continue to believe in our, like, because I think I hear a lot of dietitians just like, well, how do I keep selling myself session after session, like, and not give it all away in that first session, and have them like come back? Because we all know you can't fix your relationship with food, your body, your sleep in 1 hour. But a lot of times we believe that that's what the patient is asking for.
Oh, that's so good. That's a really big insight, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on like, how do we, again, get out of our heads?
It's kind of the same thing again. Boy, this is such a great question. What an insightful question. I'm so glad you asked this, and I can like feel people going, yes, that's what I wanted to know. Because as coaches, I go through it too. I'm like, here, blah, right? Like that's what we want to do. It's not what they want. And a lot of times, actually, we work ourselves out of the next session, or you can work yourself out of the next session because they're totally freaking overwhelmed. So one of the best things you can ask if that's your concern and you're not selling packages, which I highly recommend you do, and figure out what you need to actually, the time you need to spend actually cause a transformation and only sell in packages, is really the first question you can ask when they sit down is, what is the number one thing you'd like to figure out today?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And let them lead that. Because you have enough ammunition. You're a freaking genius. You've been at this forever, right? You can pull in your little backpack and pull out whatever you need to help them with the next thing and the next step and the next question. So don't worry about that piece. But I really am a huge fan in client-led or patient-led solutions, because they know what's keeping them up at night. They know what happens when there's a French fry and an apple, right? Like they know what's going to happen, right? They're in that moment. And if you can help them with the moment that actually matters to them, that will make all the difference. And they'll come back because they're not overwhelmed. And the other question I like to ask is, what's your biggest fear about this first session? What are you most afraid of? And what they're going to tell you is they're going to say, I'm terrified this isn't going to work. I'm terrified I'm going to fail. I'm terrified I'll love everything you say, and 5 minutes later, I'm in the drive-through, right? Or whatever. And I think if you can really get in there with them and have them recognize that you are now shoulder to shoulder with them without judgment, but only with that support, that can start to really crack open the paths you need to take to make this transition the most successful that it can be. And then you're not giving away everything in one session, which I highly recommend none of us ever do, because they leave going, habit, right? And they're like totally freaking out.
Yeah.
So, so that's my 2 cents there. Did that answer your question?
That was perfect. Okay. Because I think, as helping professionals, from dietitians, therapists, like we just want to help. And we know that this stuff is easy. Like, oh yeah, you should always have a carbohydrate and a protein and a fat, and like, we're able to, what's a carbohydrate?
Right.
Yeah. And so I think being able to really, again, let that patient lead, really slow down. I love that. And as I knock over the microphone, talking with my hands too much.
We're excited.
Yes, we are very excited. I can vividly remember being that dietitian of just like giving everything to a patient that first session. And this is when I was seeing people in person and like giving them loads of handouts. And then after the patient would leave, I'd go to the restroom and like the handouts would be in the trash. And I'd be like, oh, just heartbroken.
Oh, that's painful. Oh my gosh, Adrien, I'm so sorry that happened.
Oh, and it took a few times, probably a few too many to be like, oh, because at first I was like, oh, well, I didn't give them enough. They need double copies. And so let me just keep giving you more. And so it was like, oh, I wasn't listening. I was in my head.
Oh, that's a huge insight. And boy, I hope we heard somebody who just opened up their practice and they were like, I won't do that. Right. It
Yeah.
really is like, it's such a human mistake to make, right? Because we think more is better. Not in this instance, not in this instance. It's like, how can we make this successful for you?
Mm-hmm.
And asking the question, what do you know? Or what's your understanding of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff out there. I'd love to know what you know.
Yeah.
And then they tell you and you're like, that is totally accurate. That's great. Or yeah, isn't it crazy they taught you that? It's actually this.
Wow.
And now you've got somewhere to go with them without assuming they don't know, because they might.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that honoring somebody else's journey. And I think that really is the key to sales, is we just have to recognize that, you know, our clients and patients, and it sounds crazy that I have to say this, but I really do, because you can get kind of messed up about it. They're not our paychecks. Right. And I know everybody loves, you guys didn't get into this profession because you don't love people. I totally get that, but it can mess with you after a while where you're like, I mean, I've heard therapists be like, how many appointments? How many appointments? And it's like, I have to slow them down and go, no, how many humans? And they go, oh my gosh. Right. And it just happens. And so there's zero judgment there. It happens to everybody, but it's just a reminder that sales is really about human communication and understanding the journey of someone coming to you and the courage it takes for somebody to come to you in the first place and how terrified they are. And they've failed so many other times at other things, or other doctors have told them they're idiots, or what, you know what I mean? And so really honoring the humanity in other people. And also I have to say this a lot in the coaching industry. I have a feeling it might be a little close, but is that we need to remember too, as those providing services, that there is no such thing as any work that we could do that would lift us out of our own humanity. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have the wrong appointment time, right? You're going to say the wrong thing. Like, you know, my kids got sick. I'm showing up here with a cold, right? Like, we're all human. And we need to remember that we don't get to lift ourselves up out of humanity, and neither do the people that we serve. And that, it sounds so silly, but I've seen so many people, you know, say crazy things like, oh, you get sick? Well, what's that? I'm like, oh my heavens to Betsy. Yes, I have a body. I get sick sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't get to not be human because I transform people's lives around money. Like, no, that's not how that works. But it can be crazy. I'm sure you've run into stuff like that too, where people are like, you eat cake, right? And you're like, yeah, sometimes I do. It's okay. And I'm still alive. I know, right?
It's amazing.
I just bring that shared humanity back in. And I think that really helps people stand out in the market too. When they talk about their own humanity, their own journeys, how they still make mistakes, but what they're trending towards is so much better than where they were. And that honesty, especially in marketing and sales, I think it really translates.
Which I think is a different way of looking at marketing and sales. So bringing in that humanity, but from walking that fine line of like oversharing, like how do you like not just like overshare and look discreditable? Or
that is such a great question.
I don't know if that's the right word.
Like a dummy. How about we say that? How do you not look like a dummy? Yeah, no, that is a really great question. And I always say to people, it's the same thing as like, do you remember when, gosh, I'm going to so date myself. Remember in like the 90s where people realized all of a sudden that their emails could show up on the front page of the New York Times?
Yes.
Right. And they were like, oh no, right. Okay, not good. And I would use the same gauge here. Number one, never share a story that's not yours. I am a really big proponent of that. If you've ever seen anything about my own children, right, I ask their permission. There's not a single story anywhere that they don't know is being talked about, right? So that's a big deal. And I think the other thing is really remember, like, if I were in my deathbed and I read this story, would I be embarrassed that this is left behind? And I know that might sound a little silly, but it really can help you remember that while you're sharing your humanity, you're not running around putting yourself down. Those are two very different things, right? You can talk about, oh my gosh, the other day I was at the grocery store and I was so really wanted to get that stupid happy birthday cake. And I had this thought, does that ever not happen? Am I ever going to not want to eat the happy birthday cake? And that's a shared story, but you're not saying, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I thought that I could run this business and be a practitioner. And all I want to do is wait, what? And there you did discredit yourself, right? Because you are speaking to yourself in a way that you would encourage other people not to speak to themselves. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, because again, we're all human, but that's not what you share from. You share from the honesty of, wow, I just had a human moment. Let's talk about the human moment. And it's never disrespectful, especially to yourself or to others that might be in the story. And it's something you would always be proud of.
Yeah.
Right. Because I say it like this, like any one of us can get hit by a bus tomorrow. You know, I know that sounds crazy, but like we don't get a say in some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff is going to happen. And so sharing from that angle, but also then sharing what you're learning from it, or how it's deepening your own awareness, or it's deepening your compassion for others. That's the way to share that, because I think that's true. I don't think any of us got into the professions we're in because we wanted to be jerks and be like, I'm so perfect and you're stupid. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to do this because I was the kid staring at the cake for 5 years. Yeah. And I didn't know what to do and nobody told me. And it's not your fault. No one told you either. Oh, now that's shared humanity.
That makes so much sense. And it makes it, I feel like kind of takes down that guard of the profession and allows somebody to be like, okay, I don't feel like they're going to judge me as much.
Yes. And that's really tough in this profession, right? I mean, one of the reasons people don't sign up more is they're like, oh, they're going to see I'm really fat, or they're going to know that I eat French fries at 3 a.m, or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, dude, I know it's really hard not to do that. Right. It really takes something. Yeah. And then they're like, oh yeah, it does. And they it's almost like, I think in sharing, I love that you asked this. No one's ever asked me that before, but in sharing, I think it is more like, how can they see themselves? How can you say to somebody, I see you? And not, I see you like I'm telling you, but I see you, dude, because I was on that kitchen floor eating ice cream once too. Like, let's go. Yeah. I got your back. Yeah. And I'm real too.
Yeah. That makes a huge difference. And it kind of gets rid of that white coat syndrome too, that when working with professionals too, of like, oh, this is a human. They get it. I love that. Oh, Sarah, I feel like I could ask you 1,012 questions that I want to kind of know, how can we continue to learn from you? Because I mean, I've been taking notes like left and right. So how can I continue, or our listeners continue to learn from you? Because you feel like such a great wealth of knowledge. And I feel like we just scratched the surface.
You're so kind. Well, there's lots of ways actually. So my website is sarahwalton.com. You can go there and see my face. I have a face, or a high face. No, but I have a podcast as well. It's called the Game On Girlfriend Podcast, because this is not your practice life. The game is on. And I really run that podcast like coaching sessions. So if you've ever been like, what the heck is it like to work with somebody who works with me with sales? You can listen to the episodes and really kind of know that. And I actually do live coaching sessions on the podcast from time to time too, which is super fun. And I have a YouTube channel. And I do a weekly show called Sarah Uncut, where I just turn my phone on for about 10 minutes and we don't know what's going to happen. It's a little bit scary, but it's a lot of fun. So you can check that out there. And then as far as like actually working with me, I've just really released my signature program. We are having so much fun. It's called the Sales Mastermind. And I only open it once every 6 months, but we are like a tight group of women actually really going through all of the different aspects of sales and what it takes in addition to our relationship to money. And I'm loving it. It's like my favorite thing ever.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so much fun. Well, we'll definitely have all of the links to, especially the Sarah Uncut, and to the mastermind. But oh, Sarah, this has just been such a treat to chat with you and get to know you even more.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a joy. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks.